On today's episode, we offer a follow-up on this year's Food and Wine Festival.
I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
You are listening to the Main Street Magic Podcast with your hosts, Jeremy Stein and John Marone.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Main Street Magic. I'm your host, Jeremy Stein, and I am joined by my co-host and food fanatic, John Marone.
Good evening.
In today's episode, we offer a follow-up to Food and Wine Festival now that we've had a shot to visit during the 2017 season. Please check us out on the web at mainstmagic.com, as well as like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at mainstmagic. So we just spent the past weekend going to Disney together, had a chance to visit Food and Wine Festival for the first time in the 2017 season. So we just want to give an overview of some of the things we tried, what we liked, maybe what we didn't like. One of the first things, I think we want to go back to our previous episode that we talked about Food and Wine Fest, and we were looking at kind of reviewing what we were looking forward to. Give a couple extra tips, again, that we've talked about in the past. One of those I would say would be make sure, if you can, get there early. We know that the World Showcase is going to open up at 11 a.m. If you're there on the early end, you're not going to see big crowds at that time. And we had talked about, if you can go during the week, even better. A couple of the other things that we experienced for the first time when we went last weekend with my family was they have the Ratatouille Find Remy scavenger hunt. So for $6.99, you can go into one of the pavilions and buy a scavenger hunt, and it's got stickers, and there's a location through all of World Showcase where Remy is hiding at each of the pavilions, basically, in each of the countries. So, kids, adults alike can go ahead, search for them. When you find them, you take that sticker, you put it on that country, and at the very end, you can turn it back into where you purchased it from, and they're going to give you get to pick from 4 different keychains. Remy Ratatouille keychains. So this was something that I thought was really cool, especially to keep the kids involved while you're, adults are maybe eating and drinking around the world. For our kids that are a little bit more plain in their taste, they're not eating as much, so it was nice to have something for them to do. So I would highly recommend you go ahead and purchase that. And at $6.99, we bought one for each kid, so they don't have to fight over who's putting a sticker where and who's looking for them. But that was something we really enjoyed this time. And then one last tip that I just wanted to give before I kick it back to you, John, was that if you have the Disney dining plan, you can trade in snack credits for a large majority of items at the food booths. So, especially if you're on the quick service one, you get 2 quick service meals a day and 2 snack credits. So you could use potentially 2 of those snack credits for maybe some of the more expensive, food items that are at the booths. And we'll get into some of those, maybe what's worth it and what's not worth using your snack credit. What kind of experience did you guys have? What were some items you enjoyed? What were your overall thoughts of this year's festival being, honestly, the largest one in the 22-year history of Food and Wine?
Interesting. By going... We went the weekend after Hurricane Irma.
Yeah.
So I've never seen the parks that empty. So it made Food and Wine a little bit easy to navigate around because I don't think in any booth we waited beyond more than 2 people. So that's not the norm. It's not going to be the norm for the remaining time. But for that week it was. So it made it a little bit enjoyable. The tough thing about it is by pushing it back into it, and, for the most part, I know it's September, but September might as well be August or July.
Yeah.
It's just so hot. And I think that is the biggest thing that affected us going around. And we went late afternoon, early evening, and got to a point where, okay, we've tried enough things, we're done, we got to get out of this heat, just no more. And I think that's one of the tips that you have to realize as you're going around, you got to stop into some pavilions, sit, get some air, watch a show, do something.
Yeah.
Because this heat isn't going to stop in the next month or 2 months. we're going to be dealing with it. So get there early, use it as a lunch, get out, by 3, 4, and swim, relax, do something, or go as the sun is setting, but realize it'll be more crowded.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. Saturday, we were there for the opening at 11 of the World Showcase, and yeah, by 1 or 2 o'clock, because we were all going out that evening to dinner together, I was worried that we were just going to have to go back to the hotel and nap for the rest of the night because the heat was unbearable. But you're right. Make sure you get water. I mean, even if you're not having anything to drink alcoholic-wise, just, make sure that you're hydrated. Make sure you get into some AC, stop into some stores, take your time, enjoy it because, yeah, the heat was brutal this past weekend. But so if out of the booths you guys tried, did you hit some of the stuff that was on your list from our previous episode? Did you try some things you hadn't thought about? What did you enjoy?
We did. So of the 3 new things that I wanted to try, we did 1 of those. Of the 3 drinks, we did 2 of those. And of the past, we did 2 of those. Perfect. So not bad on a first go around. So if I kind of say, I'll just pick one right off the bat, and we'll go from there. We hit the Islands of the Caribbean stand and had the mojo pork with black beans, cilantro rice, pickled red onions. Very flavorful, good, tasty. I thought it was a great dish. I mean, just something that if you're going and you want that Caribbean type flavor and taste, it delivered on it. We also received a frozen mojito with it. We bought that as well. The mojito tasted great. It just needed to be more frozen. So I'm sure one of the things that they struggle with is these machines during the middle of the day, the heat, the temperature, keeping that stuff in that solid, thick consistency. We got it, and within a couple minutes, it was water.
Yeah.
I mean, but the flavor was there. You just wish that it was colder.
Yeah.
So I like that booth. I'd try it again. And, what was one of the ones that you guys tried?
Well, the first stop we went to, which was brand new, was the Light Lab. And this is perfect for kids. So it is... It's dark in there, but everything has black lights and everything is neon and it's very colorful. So kids just absolutely love it. So when we went in there, we didn't immediately in the Light Lab as you walk in. My wife and I didn't get anything, but for the kids, they have a cotton candy drink that is suitable for children, so non-alcoholic, and it's really cool. So you go up and you place your order, and they're going to make it right in front of you, and they've got this little cup, and they stuff it full of pink cotton candy. And then they take, I believe it's like a vanilla syrup and a soda water, and they pour it through these giant like test tubes that swirl around and do all these things, and it goes over the cotton candy, melts the cotton candy into the drink, and kids absolutely loved this drink. The other thing that we had there that they say is a limited time offer, and I didn't see it on any printed menu, was their Glow Nut. So it's a giant donut, like probably 7-8 inches, around. It glows in the dark in a sense, basically because you're under these, these black lights. But there's nothing really special to it. But it's a really, really good donut. So we picked those 2 up. We went out to find a seat, and that's where they had lined up some of the different beers. So I got the Beer Flight, which was the lighter Beer Flight. But the one that really stuck out to me out of those 3 was the Founders Brewing Company Green Zebra Watermelon Ale. That's from Grand Rapids, Michigan. If you were to purchase the flight of 3 beers, I believe it was $9. If you were to purchase just that sample, which I think, what are they, 8-10 ounce maybe? It was like $4.25, but very, very good. If you like fruity beers or something that's very light, this watermelon ale was absolutely outstanding. So for us, that was kind of where we started, and we would end up working our way through Canada and around. But what was next on your list?
Yeah, so next we did Hawaii, which one of the ones that was on our previous podcast about returning item is the pork slider. Mm-hmm. So had the pork slider. Again, it's has a sweet and sour pineapple chutney on it and a spicy mayo. And my wife had this one, and not really a spicy person, but the pineapple kind of combats that. Yeah. Loved it. And so the slider roll was good, plenty of pork on it. So that was really a good, solid dish to be able to go ahead and try. And it's, it's good enough for one person. You're not going to share it. But that was a good one, and that we liked a lot. And then from there, just because we did the same thing, we walked counterclockwise. We go back, we'll probably do clockwise.
Yeah.
Because, if you could probably make it through half of them. So what half do you want to hit? So we did Canada. Canada, for my little daughter, she loves steak, so we got her the filet. My wife and I also had the filet. $8.50 for the filet. And I think, again, I like it. And you just don't want to. It's interesting because you're not going to be eating filet out of a cardboard box. I mean, that's really what it is.
Yeah.
I mean, a cardboard container, and you have a plastic fork and knife, and you're cutting it up. But it was cooked well. It all went away, and I just look at it, and I'll continue to say it. At $8.50, I think it's a great value.
Yeah.
I don't know how big the steak is. Let's just say that even if the steak is 2 ounces, right? If you go in the restaurant, you get an 8-ounce filet. 4 times that 8.5. It's still more expensive in the restaurant.
Yeah.
So that, to me, I think is just a great value for it. Plus, it's hearty enough. And if we could ever get to the weather, and this is the one thing that I'll talk about, I think, with Disney is, I think they have to be cognizant of the weather and the dishes they're putting out.
Yeah.
I think a lot of the dishes are hearty dishes that just don't go with 90-degree temperatures.
Yeah.
It's something that your body doesn't want to take. And it's something that you look at it and say, I'm going to pass it. And so I think they need some more dishes that could be chilled, or maybe they even do something at some point where maybe they have break Food and Wine. You got 75 days now, and they want more people to attend. Break it into 2 parts.
Yeah.
Right? And here's our dishes for the early part of the festival. Here's our dishes for the late part. I just think that that's something that they have to realize, because while we got the filet, we passed on the hot soup. Right? Yeah. The cheddar cheese soup is great. I just don't want it on a 90-degree day.
Right.
Now, one of the things I was looking forward to that they had was the Moosehead Radler, the beer. Again, a fruit beer. It has lemon, grapefruit, and grapes in it. And I thought one of the best beers that I've had in a long time. So we hit the website of the local wine place here that knows, and we found out they carry it. And that'll go right into the rotation at home. I thought that was a wonderful, wonderful beer. And Canada succeeds again. So there's 2 more for me. How about you?
Yeah, no, I agree with the Moosehead. You guys went the day before us. You told us to try it. That's going into rotation. That was incredible. That's one that I think you could stop for. And along what you're saying about food, you have to think about drink as well. Now, I'm not saying you need to go there and just stand at Canada and get Moosehead after Moosehead, but something like that Moosehead Radler or the watermelon ale that I was talking about is very different than going to, the UK and getting a Guinness. I mean, again, we're talking 90 degrees outside. Be careful of what you're doing, because, if you're sitting there getting a heavy, heavy beer or a red wine at all these different booths, and at first it sounds like a good idea, it's going to catch up to you. And I'm not even talking alcohol content. I'm just talking about the heat and having this stuff that weighs on you as you walk around the entire World Showcase. So I think that's a great point. I mean, I could even say maybe in the future, we know that we've got Flower and Garden, we've got the Art Festival that are during the cooler months. You can't combat with Thanksgiving and Christmas, so it's not that they could really delay Food and Wine Fest. But I think your point of, could you have for the first half certain dishes, and for the second half, when it starts to cool down, some other dishes, that would be something to see. Now, we're fortunate enough that we can kind of go each month, and we can do that on our own. But I think that's a really good point. So I'm going to move around. Right before we got to Canada, we hit Australia. And this is going to be my absolute miss. Everything else we had I thought was a hit. This was a miss. And it was the lamb T-bone. It had a mint pesto, and they call them potato crunchies, which basically means they took, I think it was salt and vinegar chips, and just crunched them up and threw them on top. Flavors were on point. Problem was the lamb that they gave you was maybe 1/4 to a 1/2 inch thick. So all of it was overcooked. had a lot of fat on it, and it was chewy by the time, you had this teeny thin little lamb chop. So I was a little bit disappointed in that because the flavors again were there. I would not recommend you stop for that. And it was I want to say it was $7.50. So even for the portion of meat you got, it's in no comparison to the filet at Canada. Like if Australia and Canada go head to head, Canada's winning as far as meat goes. So one of the next ones we had, and this is a staple for me as far as drinks go. Now, it's not there year round, but they will have it outside of Food and Wine Festival. And it is at the Blocken House, which is the little teeny beer pavilion that sits outside of America. It's right, if you're walking towards America, and the America Pavilion is on your right, right past the funnel cakes. It is the Kentucky Bourbon Ale. And it's one of my favorite beers. First time I ever had it was at Disney. Now, if I go to a local craft brewery or I go to a restaurant that's in the area that's serving all these different craft beers, I ask for that. And it is one of my favorites. It has this, and I'm not a whiskey person, but it has this slight hint of almost a dark liquor without being like too whiskey flavored. It's kind of nutty. It's got a little bit of like vanilla. It is incredible. And I will say they serve it in a bottle there. And they'll pour it into the glass. And for some reason out of a bottle, it is so much better that if you find it at a restaurant and it's on draft. On draft, it's nowhere near as good as it is right out of an ice cold bottle. Even though they're serving it in a plastic cup in 90-degree weather, it's one of my favorite things there. And then right around the corner from that, after you grab your Kentucky Bourbon Brown Ale, you can grab a lobster roll. And I talked about this as a must-have, something we get year after year. You've got to get the lobster roll. It's incredible. And it's $8. So if you were using a snack credit on your Disney dining plan, this is probably one of the ones you might want to trade it for. We got two, as I had mentioned in the past, one for me, one for my wife. And this is what was interesting that we had not experienced at Food and Wine or almost Disney in the past was I had my lobster roll, incredible. My wife took one bite of hers and put it down and was like, something's wrong with this lobster roll. So I thought she was crazy, picked it up, smelled it. It smelled a little fishy, which is not normal, obviously, for lobster. I took one bite and was like, yeah, something was wrong with this batch. Somehow our two that were made, and served to us at the same time, something was off. So I took it right back up to the booth, and I just politely said, something was wrong with this one. It smelled fishy, it tastes fishy, and they gladly replaced it, gave me a brand new one. At that point, my wife didn't want to eat it because she already had that idea, so I was like, win-win. I ate the thing. Worked out well. I had two lobster rolls. So, again, Kentucky Bourbon Brown Ale, a lobster roll, sitting in America. We don't get those things in Florida normally.
Right.
So I really enjoyed that. What else did you have that you would highly recommend?
So we had two more. If you continue up, cross the bridge, we end up in France. Mm-hmm. We passed on the escargot and the heavier sauces and went straight for the slushy.
Okay.
So
perfect.
The vodka, the Grey Goose citron, raspberry and passion fruit purees, and it was great. What was interesting is normally it's served in like a martini glass, a plastic martini glass.
Yeah.
I don't know if because of the weather they were out or the shipment didn't arrive or what. They were just served in regular plastic cups, almost like plastic soda cups. So hopefully that's, two ways I look at this. Hopefully it's not the norm going forward because of the presentation.
Yeah.
On the flip side, I don't mind because these glasses hold a little bit more.
There you go.
So it was a nice size slushy, especially in the weather, though those are perfect no matter the weather. So we had that one. And then from there, we walked and passed a lot of places and ended up at Spain. And in the episode, I was looking forward to the paella. Mm-hmm. So by Spain, the kids were looking at the trains outside of Germany. I think my wife was looking at something else. So I went up there and I bought the paella and the charcuterie in a cone. Mm-hmm. And I said, I'll try both of these. I think one was $4.50 and one was $4.25. I mean, it wasn't
great.
bad.
Yeah, that's on the low
price.
end for Food and Wine.
And so the paella has a mussel, a shrimp, chicken, chorizo, and the rice. So it had all the ingredients on your plate.
Like one mussel,
One mussel,
shrimp,
one shrimp.
Okay.
Yep. And it was a decent sized shrimp. Actually, it had two mussels,
There you go.
but one of mine was empty. So I had the empty mussel shell, and then the other one had one in there, which happens sometimes when you cook them. I wanted to like it. I just thought it was bland. So it had all the right ingredients. The presentation was fine, a decent size, especially for the price. It's just, to me, you were looking for more of that saffron type taste, and that maybe, a little bit of the rice having somewhat of a crunch or that, because
Yeah.
normally you cook it in that big pan and the bottom gets the crunch and then you mix it up. It didn't have that. So I was a little disappointed in that one. Now, the charcuterie in a cone, it wasn't a cone. Think of a paper cone is all it is. So it's nothing that you can eat. But in the paper cone, they have meat, cheese, Kalamata olives, green olives, black olives, and it all has a olive oil and spice all over it.
Okay.
So walk around, get a fork, eat it. There was a lot in that cone, and I loved it. I thought that now I am a person that likes cheese boards and the charcuterie and everything, but this was wonderful. I'd get it again every time I'd go. I think that this was really, really good.
Yeah. Well, and if you go back to France and you go to the Escargot, the first time I went to Food and Wine, which was, I want to say 4 to 5 years ago, the escargot that they used to have, which, and not that I've been to France or I really know about escargot, it was, from my understanding, more a traditional that you would find in France. And it was it's basically a small, like almost bread bowl, and has the escargot inside and is just smothered in melted butter and herbs like parsley and all these different things. So I had it there 4 or 5 years ago. Incredible. Like, we were there for a bachelor party and everybody was saying to me, you have to try it. I'm thinking, no. Unbelievable. We went last year. The escargot they have now is in a croissant. So it's like, and to me, it's like your Pillsbury, buy from the grocery store, you and the kids roll them up, croissant, and it's filled with an overcooked snail that has no flavor and is a little bit chewy. I saw that they had the same thing this year. So I guess, I don't know if it's just the mass production of it is that much easier, if it's cheaper, but I missed that day from 4 or 5 years ago when they had, from what I've heard, is the traditional kind of escargot.
Yeah, I think the traditional with the puff pastry
Yeah.
and it's flaky, and
Yes.
I guess that's where they kind of think, well, we can use the croissant because it's flaky, but it's just so much denser.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I look at. I'd like to. You don't want things to, gosh, I like it and it goes away.
Yeah.
Like Japan has the same sushi rolls every year, right? Now, a few years ago, they had one that was a steak sushi roll. That was amazing. And it's never been back again. They just had it that once. I'd like to see these, and I don't know if they just say, hey, this sells so much,
Yeah.
looking at all the numbers, that we're going to go ahead and bring it back. I'd like to see them take some more chances and go and switch up the booths. I bring it up over and over. I brought it up on the last episode, Mexico, right?
Yeah.
The ribeye taco, I can get a ribeye taco anywhere.
Yeah.
Right? I don't need it. So I know they have to have somewhat of the familiar for people, right? Just people's tastes are different, but I'm willing to let them, hey, have one familiar, have one that every booth should have something new
Every single year. I agree completely. And I guess for the most part, again, for us who get to go year after year, we're able to tell people, I guess if I said you have to try the lobster roll and then somebody went and it wasn't there, I can understand that. But I agree with you that if they could have one new item at every single country every year and do something a little bit different would be outstanding. So I have one last item to talk about before we wrap up, And if you listen to our previous episode about the preview and what we were looking forward to trying, you will realize I didn't try a single item that was on my list during this trip. And I don't know what happened. Again, it was hot. We were just kind of trying to get through. We were focused on the kids playing the scavenger hunt Ratatouille game. But we're going back in October, and I'm going to make it a point to try these items that I spoke about last episode. But the final one, which was a repeat item from us from last year, were the spicy hummus fries at Morocco. And, I mean, it's literally hummus breaded and deep fried and served with like a cool... It's spicy, but then has this cool cucumber salad with tomatoes served on top. It will probably go next year on my go-to list of things that you must have. It'll be behind the lobster roll still because I'll never change that. But yeah, that was outstanding. So we will be back in October. You were able to knock off quite a few items from your list. I think we'll do the same thing next time. We'll start in Mexico, work our way around. Is there anything else that you're thinking you're really looking forward to that maybe you saw there you didn't realize they were going to have, or any other tips that you would give to people that are going, whether they can go one day or maybe they can go 2 or 3 days?
Yeah, to me, I hit, of the things I was looking forward to, I hit one of the 3.
Yeah.
The other 2, I skipped the booth because they were dishes that were just not right for the weather.
Yeah, for the hot.
And, the tip I gave last time, I'll say it again. Take a chance, try it. If you don't like it, it costs you $5, right? It didn't cost you an arm and a leg. But at least you can find a way to expand your palate. But go to some of the things that are unique. And while I say we're going to go clockwise and start at Mexico, I will skip Mexico and I will go on to what's next, right? I don't need to have the taco. If I need one, there's an outdoor place I can get taco right there in Mexico. There's 2 sit-down restaurants. There's enough places there. Mix it up. And Mexico has such great food if you're willing to take a chance on it. That's where, the Cochina Frontera with Rick Bayless at Disney Springs is an amazing Mexican restaurant. If they let him run the booth and do, 2 or 3 dishes, I'd stop there every year.
Yeah.
But that's not what they're doing, so I skip it. So that's the biggest thing for me. Set your budget. Pick a good time to go based upon weather. If you can go more than once, go once in the daytime, once at night, just to give you a little bit of a mix of things. But definitely just try things that are different.
Yeah.
Plan ahead.
I agree completely, John. Well, thank you so much. We'll see what we experience in October and whether we do another follow-up episode or not. We'll at least put out on Facebook, which you can find us at Maine ST Magic. We'll put it out on Twitter at Maine ST Magic. We'll talk about some of the things that we tried, if we don't do another episode. Anyway, if you could go ahead and find us on iTunes, please leave us a rating and review, as that will help the show grow. And we will see you real soon.